All right, here we are with Naomi Fox Reina. Hello, how are you?
Hello, I am so good. I am so thrilled to be here.
Thank you so much for coming. I am so excited to dive into how money works with astrology. It's going to be amazing. I'm so excited. But please tell us a little bit about how you got into astrology and human design and all the good stuff.
Absolutely. Like so many, I'm sure that can relate. I grew up in a household where astrology was like, hey, by the way, we don't do that. And so when I got to be an adult and I had just known about the horoscopes in the newspaper and I knew what my sun sign was, a friend who was cutting my hair that I barely knew, I had just met her, was like, oh, like, when's your birthday? I'm really into astrology. And I just kind of dismissed it. I was like, I'm a Sagittarius, but I don't really resonate with any of that stuff, just trying to be polite. And she did what probably many of your listeners have had happen to them on some level of, okay, do you know the minute you're born? And she proceeds to run my chart. And she, in 10 minutes, tells me unbelievable amounts of things about myself that people I'd known for 10 years didn't even know, and just blows my mind. And I felt completely exposed, and I was both horrified, but I really needed to just know more. That was the stronger emotion. And so I pretty much demanded that she tell me everything. And I just kept seeing her again and again, talk about securing a client for life, and just could not get enough, and ended up going all the way deep dive in. And here we are. And so I teach light filled astrology, and human design came later, and I teach that as well. And then I also have a full certification program for astrology so that people can become certified light filled astrologers like you.
Yay. Yes, I am a light field astrologer. And for me, I chose to take the certification, even though I had been doing astrology and studying it for 10 years because it's all in one place. And we'll talk a lot about that at the end. But I do want to know a little bit about you. What is your sun, moon, and rising sign?
Yes, you bet. So, of course, I'm a Sagittarius, and my moon is in Virgo, and it is almost exactly squaring my sun sign, which explained so much about my life. And that was really where all of the information kind of centralized around, is that conflict between my sun and my moon, with my needs perpetually being in two different directions. And then my ascendant
Mm.
is almost exactly conjunct my sun sign in Sagittarius. So I have a very, very
Wow.
big initial energy, and I come across as very authentic because there's not really a switch point between my ascendant and my sun. They're like a degree and a half apart. But then my moon sign is very exacting and very meticulous and very black and white and a little OCD. But the external part of me is very fun and very dynamic and very expansive, and both are so real and true. And understanding that dance between the two has changed my entire life.
Mm, I love it. I love it. That dance between the sun and the moon, especially with them kind of squaring each other, is
Mhm.
beautiful. Okay, so tell us the Cliff Notes version, but I want people to walk away from this conversation with three things that they absolutely need to know about their energetics when it comes to astrology or human design and money, because money is, I think, one of the things that escapes so many of us, especially in the spiritual world, or if you grew up in some kind of religious background, that money is this elusive character, and it's sort of like we either shouldn't want it or we shouldn't want too much. And there's so much wishy-wash. I mean, then we call it abundance,
Yeah,
which is a beautiful thing, but then we use abundance as a euphemism for money, and those are two different things. And
absolutely.
so I want you to have some concrete stuff for people. Look at your chart, guys, and just say, this is what I have in my chart. This is where I need to look. And this is how I want to approach money from an astrological standpoint, or even from a human design standpoint.
Absolutely. And I love talking about money. I had a ton of money blocks. I definitely had a lot of messed up beliefs about money. Now I find money to be a very enjoyable topic. I love making lots of money. I love encouraging and supporting other people to make lots of money. It just delights me endlessly.
Mm.
So, in astrology, the first caveat that I feel is absolutely essential that I discovered on my journey is to understand that money is not actually a real thing. It's not a true principle that exists outside of the here and now. It is a construct that we've made just to be able to organize our lives and to make sense of things, which is why it feels so elusive, because you're not dealing with a true principle. You're dealing with an idea that has been fabricated. Now, that doesn't mean we don't need money to live and all of that, and that life isn't much, much more enjoyable when you have plenty of financial sustenance in your life. However, the reason why money can feel so confusing is because on a fundamental level, the concept of money is not part of our natural wiring. And so when we go towards it, we just need to keep in mind what it is and what it isn't. Money is an energy, but really what we want is not money. It's not the cash. We can't really do anything with that per se. What we want is the feeling of power of choices, and we want the physical items that it purchases. We want the security of, if I'm driving down the road and I know I've got $10,000 in my bank account and I hear a funny noise in my car, that like it's gonna be okay if something breaks. Like that's what we want, is we want the feelings that come with, I have plenty of money. And so when you're looking at the astrology chart, you always want to look at the second house and the eighth house. If you're looking at a chart, there's 12 little slices of a pie. Some of them are bigger, some of them are smaller. They might all be the exact same size if you've never really looked at it before. But the second house in, and usually it's labeled with a little 2 somewhere on there, the second house, and then directly opposite from it is in the eighth house, is the money axis of the chart. Because the second house deals with stuff like physical items and the accumulation of the flow of funds that we've come to call money. And the eighth house has to do with inheritances and other people's money and how we merge power with other people. And so if you look at those, you might have some things in there. You might have nothing in there. And that if there's actual physical planetary bodies in those houses of your chart, that will tell you a lot of what's going on with your money story. Other things to look at is usually a lot of people, as they're like, I'm trying to figure out my money stuff, there's wounding there. So you want to look at your Chiron. Your Chiron is an asteroid that deals with your soul wound. It's the part of you that just hurts all the time. And if there's a problem in your life, like a life theme problem, it's going to harken back to that Chiron energy. There's going to be something there that is fundamentally expressing itself again and again and again through your Chiron. And so understanding that, understanding what's going on with your Chiron in your chart. Some people have very active Chiron energy in their chart, and some people it's just there and it's doing something, but it's not necessarily getting provoked a whole lot. I find that most people in the healing arts world, especially if you feel compelled to do healing arts through your business, have a very strong, prominent Chiron playing out in their chart, because it's the wounded healer. And so it's both our wound, and it's also how we heal ourselves and how we help heal others. So the salve that we bring to other people to help heal them is often the lessons that we've learned. We've said, I've walked this path. It was really hard. I had a huge aha, and now I really feel compelled to share what I learned with others. It's pretty much any heart-centered business is going to be kind of having that undertone. You're going to see that come through in the Chiron energy. And so you can't look at how do I attract more money without acknowledging what's going on with Chiron.
I love this. Can you talk specifically, because I know there's a lot of people listening who actually have Chiron in Taurus. Can you talk about that?
100%. And I have my Chiron in Taurus. So Chiron went into Taurus in the late 70s and stayed there until the early 80s. So there's a nice little chunk of like 6 or 7 years that Chiron spent in Taurus back then. And then of course, 50 years before that. And then we're getting ready in a few more years for Chiron to transit back across through Taurus. So Taurus is the energy of stability, financial abundance, the physical house that you live in, the tangible things of life, the pleasures of life, the 5 senses. All of these things are very Taurian, they're very Taurus energy. And if you take Chiron and put it in there, you're going to have wounding around all of those things. And so I have found that people with Chiron and Taurus have higher amounts of woundedness around money, around deserving money, allowing the pleasures that money brings, all of these many, many layers, often even eating disorders, food disorders, body dysmorphia, because you're dealing with everything that's tangible and everything that's pleasurable. And so they'll be like, it's easier to get into overeating, or sometimes you'll see anorexia there too, but usually it's more of the, I love abundance with food. And I definitely have walked my own path with many, many flavors of that. And I've just seen it in so many clients. And so with the Taurus Chiron energy, It has been very provoked with Jupiter transiting through Taurus over the last few years. I know that me personally, I was extremely aware while Jupiter was transiting across my Chiron, and with Uranus going across as well, like all of that is being heavily and slowly activated. Like you'll
Yes.
spend weeks and weeks and weeks inside of one of those activations when those planets are right there. And people listening might have it right now. They're like, well, that explains a whole lot about why I am in so much pain about this thing. But there's always the gifts too. There's always the healing gifts when we can surrender. If we get stuck in the bitterness and the resentment and the shame and the difficulty of it, we don't get to the gift of Chiron. And so Chiron blossoms when we have surrender. So yes, the Chiron Taurus energy is powerful, powerful layers of financial healing. But also, I believe that these are some of the most powerful teachers when it comes to money, because they like I've talked to people that don't have a Chiron and Taurus. I have a good friend that she's made a whole lot of money in her business, and I was like, oh, I have a question. Like, what switched for you? What was the point that clicked over? This was a few years ago that I was asking her this, and I was like, tell me, like I'm so excited because obviously you've unlocked something. And she's like, oh, I've never thought of that before. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what? Like you went from like struggling a lot to like making hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you haven't thought about what changed. Like her Chiron is not in Taurus. And so like to me, being a Chiron Taurus, it's where my lessons almost always come back to.
Yeah.
I've studied money, mindset, financial abundance very intentionally, starting in the first time I started it was in 2014. So we're at 10 years of very, very consistent. And I'll meet people to be like, oh yeah, I got into this a couple years ago and they've unlocked stuff. And I'm like, huh, like, so my favorite analogy about understanding money is, and really anything, is that it's like a combination lock, where you've got to get all the numbers and letters just so that it'll unlock. And if you imagine whatever problem you're dealing with, let's say money, let's say, okay, I'm trying to get to the 10K a month mark in my business. That's a very common marker that people make. If you need so many things of that combination lock set so that you can have the flow to follow the principles that govern these things, some people start out the process with 8 out of 10, or 80 out of 100 of whatever those little things are. And some people start with 5 out of 100. And so and so wherever it is that your Chiron is, I think a lot of times you just have more to figure out. And it's not that you're doing a bad job or that you lack some kind of intelligence or that you're not getting it. It's just you contracted on a soul level to really truly learn those lessons. And there's other things that you just come really easy to you, or that just work out, or that have never been a struggle or a trigger to somebody else that is like their whole world of pain.
Yes.
And so money is just so easy to focus on, and it is quote unquote universal, that when you come across people that don't struggle with money, it's almost like, can I study you? Like, how is this not a thing? And then because most of us are so focused on, if I just had more money, these 85 problems would vanish.
Yes.
And to an extent, probably 80 out of those 85 problems would legitimately vanish if you had steady flow coming in easily without you having to lift a finger. However, it's easy to get fixated and think that it is the only problem, and that's just not true.
Yeah. No, absolutely not. I in other episodes, I've said, when we talk about money, we get obsessed over making more and spending less. But there is just like so much structure in between, and all of the parts of our chart govern those structures in between as well. And wounding is such an important piece. So thank you so much for talking about that part.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can anyone with any sign and anything make lots and lots of money? And if so, what does that mean? What does that look like?
In theory, yes. I do think that some of us have stronger soul contracts to things that are specific that could make that process easier or less easy, but that doesn't mean that the path is forbidden or blocked or inhibited. I think it's for each of us to really check in and be like, why do I want lots of money?
Yeah.
There's no wrong answer, but I think that the power and the freedom comes in really comprehending the motivations for what's going on there. In human design, there's a much more advanced concept called motivation. You have your strategy and authority and your aura type and your profile lines, and all of that is the most simple, and you can pretty much understand it in 5 to 30 minutes of somebody explaining it to you, at least the broad strokes. But motivation is it's very sensitive to the birth minute, so if you're not sure, it's really difficult to tell. And there's 6 different motivations, and each of them comes with a transferred motivation. Most of us are living in our transferred motivation, and when we move into our actual divine motivation, it we can be so much happier. And I do find that understanding those things can really help to clarify motivations, like, why are you doing this thing? And so when we get into panic, we usually sit solidly in our transferred motivation. And when we're free and we're in ease and flow, we know what it feels like to be in our divine motivation. And like, for example, my motivation is innocence and my transferred motivation is desire. So that means when I get very goal oriented and I want to accomplish things and I want to go after what I want, and I get very, very like assertive and aggressive and intense, that is very out of alignment for me. And what I'm here to do is just follow the butterfly, or just have delicious conversations with amazing people and just let things be as they are. Like, absolutely no agenda is the innocence motivation. And since learning that, I've been able to see when I've created things out of that innocence and how beautifully that they've come together. And when I have burnt myself out, and it's not that the thing didn't work, it's that it costs me so much when I'm out in my desire motivation.
Yeah.
But like my 13-year-old, his motivation is desire and his transferred motivation is innocence. They're always on either side. And so for him, he's supposed to decide, what do you want, and go after it and go with all the passion and all the vigor and all the desire and all the joy in your whole heart. And his transferred motivation of innocence could look like eating Fruit Loops in mom's basement when he's 45, because he doesn't want to like, fully embody his life. He just wants to live like a little kid forever. And I'm sure we've seen people like that too. And so it's not like there's a motivation that's wrong. It's just what's yours. And are you aware of it and aligning to it? And so there's all these little things that influence it. And I think we get into panic and we focus, I just need more money and that'll fix it.
Yes.
And I love money. I really think it can solve so many problems. It legitimately can. That is real and that is true. And that's why so many of us are focused on that. However, it is so easy to make it a massive band-aid that blinds us to what the real issue is, because every problem that you have in your life is a relationship problem. And money doesn't fix relationships. It fixes temporal problems, like enough food, stability in your housing, a car that's comfortable and enjoyable. It can create pleasure. It can create all these temporal experiences. But if you're having a crack in your relationship foundations, no amount of money is going to fix that. We know that. That's what all the movies and the books and stuff like that are about. But it's so crucial to parse out and be like, okay, these problems will legitimately be fixed with money. And these problems are where I have to show up and I have to be honest with myself and with other people, and I have to do the work and I have to clear my junk and I have to self-confront and all of those things. And so just being aware that there are different types of problems. And so just to anybody who's listening, if you've never heard these concepts before, I'm so delighted that you're hearing this.
Yes. So this is so wonderful, so amazing. Thank you so much, Naomi, for diving into these concepts. One person's poison can be another person's medicine with the transfer concept. This is just so important.
Yeah.
Now I have a question though. I've heard you say this before, and I wanted to ask you point blank, and I've never asked you this question before.
Oh, I'm so excited.
I know. So am I. You've done courses for a couple of years, but before that, you were making money mostly from one-to-one sessions. Can you talk about how robust that was for you? And because I think there's a lot of people out there who want to become astrologers, but they think there's no money in it. So can you talk about that?
So yes, I started out with one-to-one sessions, and I would say that as my not just confidence, but awareness grew, that nobody believes that they're ready. Like, you start before you believe you're ready, and you are ready. Like, just you learn by doing. And so once I really kind of got into that flow and I started to trust that what I had to offer was helpful. And then you get the feedback and all of that too of like, thank you so much. That was so helpful. That was life-changing. I took your advice and blah, 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 blah. Like that, once you get kind of past that initial speed bump area where you're like, I don't know if what I have to offer is helpful and blah, blah, blah. So we're assuming that you're solidly in the like, I'm very good at what I do. Like if you're in that place and you're like, I love doing sessions, I know they're helpful. I am a fan of charging what you're worth, but I'm not a fan of just inflating your prices just because you can, per se. Like there's definitely a balance between charging enough that it's worth it and it feels good in your body and it feels good to your mind and your heart and your soul, and also making yourself financially accessible for people. So yeah, when I started doing sessions consistently, I was doing as many as I physically wanted to in a week. I have lower energy levels than a generator might because I'm a projector. So I don't have a defined sacral in human design, which means I just don't have consistent access to my physical output. And so I just have to be much, much more guarded. And so somebody who had more sustained energy could definitely do more. But when I got a bunch of financial software and I started tracking everything, I was really delighted to see that I was making close to 6 figures just doing one-on-one sessions, and then I would do some small group classes that were just like, I want to teach about this, like in my innocence motivation, like this sounds like fun, I would love to do this. And I'd get like 40 or 50 people that would do a very low ticket, like $11, right? And so that gave people access to me and I could still bless their lives. And then it helped them to know that they wanted to have a one-on-one session with me. And so my calendar would fill up, and then I did raise my prices some, and then I raised my prices more. And so before I had started my full certification program, I had made more than 6 figures. And really my certification program price point, like if we're just talking like business owner to business owner, it is very realistic to put together a group program that's at the same price point and make the same. Like you don't have to be like, well, I can't do a whole certification program, so I guess that's out. But yeah, putting together some kind of a group program that lasts with a container, like there's ways to structure it where you have live group sessions, you have individual one-on-one sessions. I mean, it would keep you busy, but you could make really, really good money. I mean, you can make hundreds of thousands of dollars. I really believe that. And I think the biggest reason why people don't make that money is simply because they don't believe it's possible and they don't believe that they're worthy to receive it. And so the money, the energy of that money could be literally flowing right towards you. And justly so. But if you don't believe that you can receive it, it's the wildest thing to look at. Like energetically, when you look at what's going on with people, it's like they run out of the way of the flow, or they redirect it, or they sabotage it, or they put their hands and their feet up and they say, don't come. And it's like, why would you do that? That's so amazing. Like, and I see it all the time, and I get it because I used to do it. Like, I'm not over here judging anybody. I'm like, I remember when I did that. And really what goes through my head is, I so wish that I could help them see, like for 5 minutes, how it would feel and what it would look like to not do it that way. And then they would just stop doing it that way. And I would love to see heart-centered, soul-aligned people making lots and lots of money, blessing lots and lots of lives. Like, I think that that is just a gorgeous, amazing way that the world works. And that's the fantasy world I live in. And that's what I'm trying to create here.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing so deeply with that, because I know it's a very personal question. And so thank you.
I don't mind talking about money, but I know it makes some people uncomfortable. So I'm delighted that you asked.
I love talking about money. I worked in the financial industry for 12 years, and all my days were spent. How much money do you make? What are your assets like? Like, what is this? And
so fascinating. And unfortunately, and you probably see this more than most, in this industry of like coaching or like programs, people just inflate their numbers. And it's fine. People can do whatever they want. But I want to talk about real numbers. Like, I want to talk about somebody who's like, okay, I'm solidly making $5,000 a month and I'm delighted about that, but I want to get to that $10,000 a month. Like, I don't want to hear your inflated numbers. I don't want to know that one month you made $11,000 and now you tell everybody that's what you make every single month. Like, I like real numbers, because if you have real numbers, you're standing in reality and you can grow from reality. If you're not standing in reality, if you're standing in a fantasy world, you can't grow unless you're going to grow in your fantasy world. And I like growing in reality. It's so much more fun.
It's so much of like real money sounds more fun than pretend money.
It really,
Absolutely.
really is just that simple. And if you're not going to be honest with yourself, obviously you're not going to be honest with anybody else. And if you can't be honest in the conversations you're having, you're only growing in your fantasy world that you made for yourself.
For sure. Absolutely. Yeah. So tell us about your certification. Who is it for? And if people want to get certified in astrology and make close to six figures by just doing one-to-one sessions without a problem, and they don't know anything about astrology, is this the right person? Is this the right course for them?
Absolutely, yes, for sure. First of all, because I have really good, clean money energy, as obviously you've been able to tell. And so learning from somebody that has that good, clean money energy because they've done
Yeah.
their work, huge, almost more important than anything if that is your goal. And the certification will take you from not knowing, like if you learn today that you have a moon sign, like I've got you, as well as people who've been studying it for a decade or more. I've had even professional astrologers come through my program simply because they want to be able to call themselves a certified light field astrologer. But I did design it to be from the most elemental levels of not knowing anything. I will take you through all of it. And in 3 months, if you do the work, if you attend all of the lives and you go through the course material, you will know astrology. You'll be able to read charts and be able to do sessions where you can be paid and compensated well. This is especially wonderful for people who maybe are already doing some kind of sessions or work or doing something that they're offering and they're feeling like they don't have an edge or they don't have a way to stand out or they lack confidence in how to structure their sessions or how to put
Yeah.
things together. This will absolutely give you that because what I consistently see, I have people who are just straight up astrologers, kind of more like me, who just love this work. But what I see the most frequently is people who already have some kind of healing modality or speaking or something to share, or they're teaching something. And then if they can infuse it with astrology, all of the sudden they really stand out. They have phenomenal insights for their clients or customers or patients or whatever. I have therapists doing this. And just being able to read a chart, you can integrate that as much or as little into your sessions as makes sense for what you're doing. And you can significantly increase your income. I know there's lots of options for certifications out there, but this one is so incredibly potent. And honestly, the price point is so low
So good.
for how much that it really empowers you to do. And then you get to hang out in the whole world of all of these astrologers that are going through this content and have their own businesses and their own perspectives. And honestly, I've attracted some of the most amazing women and one guy so far. We've had one guy go through it and the rest are women. And I'm sure that will only change. But I've been doing the certification for just over 2 years. There's over 111 that have gone through it. Currently, as of the time of this recording, we have 33 fully certified light field astrologers and growing. There's
Hey.
the 34th is about to be awarded her certification any day now. And I'm sure there will be significantly more as we keep going because the level of support that I've infused even just this year alone into the program is like it's wonderful to see so many people feel so supported and be able to really understand this so that it can actually create that real traction in their life for themselves personally and also for the people that they work with.
Yes, yes, absolutely. A few things to touch on that you just said because you just like went through so many things. One, I was one of those healers. I find it so much easier to get people to sign up for an astrology session than a healing session, but then we end up doing healing work in astrology. So just look at the points and I go, okay, let's heal around your Mars or whatever it is. And
Yes.
because it gives us something to talk about. It gives us a starting point. It gives us a jumping off point. And I go look at a chart and I go, oh, okay, you've got Pluto in the first house. What does that feel like in your body? And they go, whoa, let's talk about that, you know?
Mhm.
And instead of going, all right, here's the interview, tell me everything, you know, and it takes the pressure off of them of figuring out what their problem even is and what to talk about. So it's been such a good helpful thing for my business to
Yes.
just have that astrology session as an option and people know like I want to talk about astrology.
It's so true. The doors that it opens up are just off the charts. Like even when I was single and I was dating and I would talk to guys or whatever and it would come up and I loved it because I got all the information I needed. the reason why my husband knew after the first conversation that I was totally different is because I ran his chart and I told him a few things about him.
Mm,
And it blew his mind wide open. And he said, "That's not fair. You know everything about me, and I don't know anything about you." And I was like, "Yep, good luck. You're gonna have to work for every bit of it." Like, and it just created such powerful intrigue. And that works in
yes.
dating, it works in client attraction, it works in being able to work with your kids and being able to like help them and guide them and teach them in really excellent ways. There's no relationship that is untouched by being able to open doors from this new language. It's like, oh, let's talk about your moon sign instead of tell me about your most intimate and like personal, heartfelt desires and needs. Like that's
Yes.
heavy conversation. But instead, if you're like, well, your moon sign is in Gemini, so let's talk about that.
Mm-hmm. Totally different conversation. Totally different. I love it. I love it. It really changes the
Mm-hmm.
whole thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you are curious, if you want to sign up, there is a new registration for certification starting when?
May 10th.
Oh,
And the certification is, we're going to get started on June 20th. So summer solstice. And
yeah.
we will begin the next cohort, and it runs for 12 weeks with live meetings to answer all of your questions. And there is 16 hours of pre-recorded content that goes week by week and holds your hand through the whole process.
It's so good. And it's so good. Okay, so do you have a cap on the number of people who are allowed to come in, aren't you? Don't you?
Yes, yeah, we take fairly small groups because we need to be able to focus on anybody. This is like on each individual person. You're not going to be in there with like another 150 students, like all learning at the same time. We actually cap it at 30 is the absolute max that we can take each time. So these are very small groups, and you get one-on-one attention, one-on-one mentorship. You can text us anytime. And there's
Mm,
multiple people checking that text line to be able to provide support. We even have office hours where you can meet live outside of the group sessions. I mean, I've never heard of a program like this, especially at the price point I am. My coach tells me all
yeah.
the time, like, I cannot believe you're still offering it at this price, but I insist on keeping it at this price. And I check in energetically and I'm like, this is what it needs to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we thank you for having such a good price point. And speaking of the low price point it already is, you're giving of everyone who's listening $1,100 off,
I
right?
am. Yeah. But
I
only
love
with
it.
your code.
Yes, with my code. So click the link in the show notes. It's like a long website, so I'm not even going to say it out loud. But click the link in the show notes. Just type when you go to sign up, type in 1100 JAYEANNE, and that will get you $1,100 off your certification for the Lightfold Astrology course. That's right, 1100 JN. So that is your code. Click the link, and that's what we got here. What is one thing that you want everyone to know before you sign off today?
If I could say one thing directly to your heart, the person who's listening, that you could hear
Mm,
right to your heart, and it
mm,
actually would like go in and fill your heart with warmth and like become written on your heart, it would absolutely be that you are doing so much better than you know.
yes.
Like so much better than you know. And I can show you why.
Oh, I love that. I'm gonna cry too. Oh my gosh. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. So many times we are just putting up these things to say, I'm doing terrible, I'm doing terrible, and we're really doing better than we know.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Naomi, for being here with us, for walking us through all of those things. I truly appreciate you for who you are and what you bring to this planet. So thank you so much, Naomi.
Thank you, sweet friend.
All right. Well, that is Naomi Fox Reina. Please make sure to check out the certification and make sure to go to alexology.com to see everything that Naomi has to offer, not just certification in astrology. There's so much more. So everyone have a great day, and we will see you next week.